Book Worms Horror Podcast is sponsored by Creepy Crate. Creepy Crate is a horror and true crime subscription box filled with spooky collectibles, macabre accessories, and terrifying goodies. Each bi-monthly box is filled with over $85 of terror and includes at least one horror or true crime book. This box delivers dread to your doorstep for just $39.99 with free shipping. Go to creepycrate.store to subscribe. Use the code BOOKWORM5 at checkout to get $5 off your subscription. That's BOOKWORM5 for $5 off your subscription. And now to the show. Welcome to Book Worms Horror, the podcast that offers you tips for writing in the horror genre. I am James Ippoliti. I produce multiple podcasts, including The Real Demons of Pop Culture and This Is Some Scene. And joining me is Regina St. Clair, a Waddy Award winner for Best Horror Novel, as well as multiple screenwriting awards, including a Webby honoree. Regina is also the contributing editor of the best-selling Local Haunts Horror Tube anthology. You can find Regina and her alter ego, Batilda, at her BookTube channel, Regina's Haunted Library, and on her blog, rstclair.com. We are both the editors of the Book Worms Horror Zine. Gina's over at the Haunted Library. I'm in the Office of Demonology. Let's talk technology in horror and how we get around the technology that exists. The one thing I like about reading stuff that is from a different time period is in today's world, you might think, why didn't they just pick up their phone and dial 911? It is just, you have to explain why things like that, if you're writing for in today's time period.
Oh my gosh.
With
the
cell
phone.
Cell phones, all that stuff. That's going to be on their mind, so it better be on yours.
That is the bane of every writer's existence, is the cell phone. And do you remember when early days in the cell phone when you could be out of reach? Like, we're not getting reception. Like, that was a great way out of it, you know? Like, we're so far out in the mountains, we're not getting any signal. Well, now, is there any place on this earth, even Antarctica or something, where you can't get a signal?
Released with iOS 16 on the newest iPhones, it's called SOS Satellite. And so it's designed that if you are out of anywhere, you can still contact 911.
Oh, wow.
Through the satellites.
Unless you drop your phone in the creek.
Well, yeah, you have to somehow get rid of that device. So these are things that if I was writing, I would be like, I have to somehow get rid of the phone. I have to get rid of the connection to the internet somehow if I'm in a house, right? Same thing with smart devices, like there was, I didn't see it yet, but the new Scream movie,
no,
there's
I didn't watch
the
that
thing
one.
where somehow the killer connects to the home network and can, like, open the doors.
Oh,
because she's like, lock
smart.
the front door, lock the front door.
That's
and then
clever.
It's like, open the front door.
It's like, Alexis, open the door.
Yeah. So it's like, and I would tend to write in the 1980s or something just because I wouldn't have to deal with any of that. But then you have to deal with the period, and you have to get the period right. Not
That's
100%,
true.
but close.
Yeah, like I'm writing a young adult novel currently for, it's not a horror, it's more like a V.C. Andrews type book, but for Wattpad. I'm almost done. And how I got around the cell phone is this girl's adopted by this like really religious conservative family that believe cell phones are like devilish.
Right.
So no one's allowed to have one. So that kind of got around that. But yeah, it's a pain. It's a pain because that was a big thing. If you remember, James, back in the day, even through the 80s, they always had the shot of the hand cutting the phone wires.
And even, you used to be able to play with that stuff. Like in the movie, like the phone calls coming from inside the house. Like, that was so scary. Yeah. But now it'd be like, what?
Like, there's a whole section in, like, a sequence in Black Christmas where they're tracing the phone call. Like, that was always, like, part of, like, the clock running out at the end of the film. It's like, we got to trace the call.
Yeah, someday we should do an episode just on, like, things that work that wouldn't work anymore, or that would work and people should explore it.
True.
Because there was always certain sequences that created great suspense, and one of them, for example, would be developing film.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that one.
And that was always a great suspense
Right,
tool.
because you're in the dark room, you got that red light.
Yep.
So it's very dramatic, and then you would see the photograph slowly come,
come
to life.
Yep.
And like in Omen.
Yep.
Remember that?
Oh my God! Yeah, I love that.
Developing the photos with the heads cut off.
Yeah, not as effective, but it was in Jaws 2.
Of course it was.
Where in the
All
beginning,
roads lead back to Jaws.
It does, but they had the scuba diver was taking pictures, gets attacked, and then they go in there. They're doing this film developing, and Roy Scheider's convinced it's a shark, and they're like, that could be anything.
Now they could zoom in on the pixels and do like facial recognition.
Digitally enhance it.
Digitally enhance. Well, that's another thing. And speaking of digitally enhanced, remember in Blade Runner?
Yes.
The photograph is being digitally enhanced
on
like an 80s computer for the entire film.
Yeah. No, that was really cool.
Yeah, we don't have that anymore.
There's a lot we don't have.
There's a lot we don't have, and a lot of it has to do with. In fact, I've noticed more horror films have tried to go beyond the bounds, of civilization in order to escape those tethers.
Yeah, they have to get out somewhere in the woods or into space.
They have to go into the jungle or the space or.
Well, even the recent movie Fall, where they climb the cell tower, and they're at the top, like that, they're taking them. Well, there's two versions of this. There's one Fall where they go to the top of the cell tower and they have to get rid of all the technology because they're stuck up there and they have a phone, it drops,
Mm-hmm.
They do everything they can to keep them from being able to connect and get help. And then there's the opposite of that was like 40 meters down where they go to the bottom of the ocean and they're stuck down there and there's sharks.
Okay, I didn't see either of those, but that sounds cool. But, I guess the only other alternative is to have like an evil presence take over the phones,
Yeah, and that's been done. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's been done.
But that's also something you can do when you're creating your rules. Like, okay, I need a villain, and maybe the villain has some connection to the technology.
That that would be a very interesting documentary, to survey how technology has been played out in horror films, for the past 20 years or something.
That is a really good idea.
It is a good idea because you think about I was thinking, what was the movie? I think it's called Sliver. It's this bad Sharon Stone movie.
That's with the worms?
No, it's when she lives in the huge. No, that's Shiver. Maybe she lives in the huge apartment building, and what's his name? Jake Gyllenhaal's watching her from every. He's like in the room with every single camera angle.
I know, yeah.
That's been done before, like the control room, where you're watching. But there was some. Actually, this was kind of a bad movie, but I watched this film that came up on, one of my streaming services about the Zoom call. Did you see that?
No.
And all the different women are participating in the Zoom call. It was during COVID. And then one says, "Oh, someone's at my door. I'll be right back." And then she never returns.
That's interesting.
It was interesting, but unfortunately the acting was super bad. And I sounded so Valley Girl there. Super bad. But
totally.
This is totally bad.
Gag me with a spoon.
Gag me. But it was gnarly. But that destroyed my suspension of disbelief. Was bad acting will do that.
Yeah.
Michael Crichton, I think his first film was Westworld, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was.
Which is really old. He must have been super young when he did that, and that still. I was watching some of it. I saw that movie in the movie theater when I was very young, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. And that, he was predicting. I think that's what good science fiction does. It predicts what will happen, that could happen, and probably will happen. We're not at the Westworld state of robots, but we're pretty damn close.
Yeah. Yeah, we are damn close. I mean, I don't know in our lifetime what it'll be like, but my kids, man, they are.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think. It's gonna be like Terminator, Skynet, and stuff.
I don't know. I think that having, I think war will change. I mean, in some ways it'll be good. You know, you're not risking.
Yeah, if you're sending robots.
You're not risking bodies. You're risking,
technology.
Technology
But that would cost a fortune.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the price of and God, I hate I'm saying this, but the price of a human going to war and dying versus a $9 billion robot, then the economy's going to go nuts. So,
wow. What a thought.
I don't want humans to go. I'm just saying,
I don't either.
Can't imagine that they would get anybody to agree to that kind of money. Where's that money coming from? We're getting way off topic here.
I know we are, but they have drones and things like that
Yeah.
that can kill people. And
yeah, but you see those
scary.
drones that get shot down. Then the biggest article the next day is we just lost a $8 billion drone.
Yeah.
And now the enemy has our technology. So I don't know. I don't see I get it. It's better to have robots dying, but until we can get them cheap enough, I think then we can start sending them in. But then I don't know. Who knows? I hope I'm not around watching.
Okay, question though before we continue. Do you think plague horror is played out?
No. So I think what's happening currently is plague horrors and zombie horror are coming together. I think also with COVID, I think we're going to see more of it.
Okay.
I personally don't. I like dystopian horror. Mm-hmm. And so if you can come up with a way to do a plague horror with a fresh take, I'm all for it.
Fresh take is.
I read, I don't know if you ever read, it was called 1 Second After, and it's by William R. Forstchen. And I don't know if I'm saying that name right. And it's like a trilogy. There's another one called 1 Year After. This is the idea if technology, so it's more like a virus to technology, and we lose everything. And there is science behind this. And it's a very scary thought that if you read 1 Second After, you'll see wow, how much we depend on so much stuff and how quickly we go downhill.
Yeah.
And it's a really good story, and it's frightening.
But, I do remember during, and this was before the internet was just everywhere, and smartphones, I think, were everywhere, is during Hurricane Katrina, when that city, New Orleans, shut down completely for weeks. This journalist wrote this really good, I have to find it, but he wrote this really good series about how he and his neighbors, they had a house, like an apartment building in the French Quarter. And if you've ever been there, they have these courtyards, and they close the shutters during, parts of the day when it's really hot. And they have these courtyards, and they had a pool in the courtyard, and how they became really civilized. This whole group of people got together, and they rationed their food, and they would have these dinners by candlelight by the pool at night, and they felt we're okay because we have water in this pool. And it was just it slowed down the world where they could actually talk to each other.
I would be willing to bet that those people have money.
Well, I mean, I guess it maybe had a little bit of money because they're living in the French Quarter, but it was an apartment complex. It wasn't
I get that, but a lot of that stuff during Katrina, I mean, there was so much devastation, and the people who lived in the sadder parts of town didn't have. It was much
right.
More
I know what you're right. Well,
so,
they got completely flooded.
Right, and so I think, and then no one was coming to save them, and so, I agree that there. I think I saw with COVID. I think we all. I saw more positive out of that in the COVID world than negative.
It's that's all kind of like a weird dream.
It is like a weird dream. And it's interesting, and I'd love to hear from our listeners how many people wrote more.
Mm-hmm. I did. I wrote 4 books.
But when I was doing, I had a podcast that's kind of on hold now, but it was the Songsmith podcast, and I was talking.
I remember that. Yeah.
And everyone who had I interviewed had songs they wrote. All these songs they wrote during COVID, and not it's COVID, but it made them think a lot more about the world and themselves and their lives, and they really dug deeper to come up with their art. in that time period.
I think if you're creative, like I'm not worried if there's like a sun flare. Of course, I'm older. I've lived a lot of my life, but and everything shuts down. As long as I have, I can survive, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I have a lot of books I could, spend time reading.
Yeah, my wife always says, like, you would not have found a happier person than me during that time
during
period.
COVID.
Just the world shut down. And I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
I know. I think a lot of us who that's what's fun about being creative. And you can waste time, and I do it too, like getting pulled into stupid rabbit holes. This is why I told my husband just recently, I'm not watching the news anymore.
All right, so let's wrap this up. You can find us on Instagram at Book Worms Horror Zine. You can also check out the show notes for all the links, especially if you want to pick up the Book Worms Horror Zine, issue 1, $5, and free shipping for the first issue. And we will be back in a week with another episode. So thanks for listening.
All right, sounds like fun.
All right.
More to talk about. Okay,
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Bookworms is a Guerrilladelphia production.